So a bit of background. I, 28F, have an older sister, Emma, 32F, who has always been a bit of a diva. We've had a complicated relationship for years, and while I've always tried to be supportive, it feels like she's taken advantage of me at times. The latest incident has been about her wedding, and I'm honestly at my breaking point. Emma got engaged about a year ago, and from the very start, she started asking for my help with various wedding-related tasks. At first, I was happy to help. I'm good with organizing things, and I've always had her back in the past. I helped her with planning the guest list, finding vendors, and coordinating things when she was busy at work. I thought it was just me being a good sister, but I started to notice some weird dynamics. She started making requests that felt more like demands. For example, she asked me to help design the wedding invitations, but when I showed her the first draft, she completely tore it apart. I tried to suggest some alternatives based on her feedback, but she didn't seem satisfied with anything I did. Eventually, she said, "You're the creative one, so figure out." This was frustrating because I'm not a graphic designer. I just have a knack for aesthetics. The next thing that really rubbed me the wrong way was when she asked me to be her maid of honor. I hesitated for a moment because of our strained relationship, but I agreed, hoping that maybe it would bring us closer. She was thrilled and started immediately assigning me responsibilities, most of which were incredibly time-consuming. She asked me to plan her bachelorette party, which I was happy to do. However, as I started organizing it, I ran into a problem with the venue. I communicated the issue to her and asked for her input, but she dismissed my concerns, saying, "I'm too busy with other things to deal with this." As the months went on, I kept getting more and more tasks dumped on me. I didn't mind doing the work, but I felt like she didn't respect my time or my boundaries. I work full-time, and my personal life was starting to feel like it was on hold. At one point, she demanded that I spend an entire weekend helping her with wedding dress shopping. I agreed, even though I'd already made plans to spend time with my partner. When I brought it up, Emma got upset and told me that my plans didn't matter because this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. I felt guilty, but I canceled my plans and went with her. But the final straw came when Emma started criticizing everything I did. She hated the bridesmaids' dresses I picked out, even though she had given me the color scheme and said, "Just pick something cute." She didn't like the decor choices I made for the bridal shower and literally laughed at the centerpieces I'd spent hours making. I tried to brush it off, but she kept making snide comments. At one point, she even told me that she didn't think I was good enough to handle these tasks and that I should just leave it to the professionals. This hurt more than anything, and it was clear that she was belittling me. I started pulling back, trying to set boundaries. I told her I couldn't keep doing everything for her, especially since she didn't seem appreciative. She accused me of being lazy and said that it's my job as your sister to help you out, but I honestly started to feel like I was just a free worker. She even called me selfish for not wanting to go above and beyond for a big day, saying that sisters are supposed to be there for each other. A few days ago, she asked me to take over handling all of her wedding RSVP responses, even though I already had a million other things on my plate. I snapped. I told her that I wasn't going to do any more work for her wedding and that if she wanted to get married, she could figure things out herself. She was shocked and immediately started crying, saying I was ruining her wedding and that I was being selfish. Our parents called me afterward, telling me that I was being unreasonable and that I should be more supportive of her during this important time. I've been feeling guilty, but also incredibly frustrated. I know my sister can be demanding, and I've always tried to be there for her, but this just feels like too much. She hasn't apologized for how she's treated me, and now she's acting like I'm the villain for not dropping everything to cater to her needs. I just want to know, AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding after all the disrespect she's shown me? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to give my sister my wedding venue after she lost hers. I, 27F, am getting married in 3 months to my fiancée, 28M. We've been together for 5 years, and our wedding planning has been pretty smooth up until this point. We booked our venue about a year ago. It's a beautiful place with a rustic vibe, located in a forested area near the coast. It's been my dream venue for years, and I was ecstatic when they had an opening the exact weekend we wanted. We put down a hefty deposit, locked everything in, and started planning the rest of the details. My sister, 30F, who has always been a bit of a free spirit, is also engaged. She had been planning her wedding for a while and was set to marry a few months after me. She's always been a bit more laid back about things than I am, and she didn't seem to care too much about wedding details. She was content with booking a venue last minute, until about 2 weeks ago. Out of nowhere, she called me in a panic. She told me her venue had fallen through. Apparently, the venue she had reserved, a pretty trendy, barn-style place, was having financial issues, and they had to cancel her booking. She said she was devastated, but she seemed more upset about the inconvenience than about not having a backup plan. She asked if there was any way she could borrow mine. At first, I thought she was joking, but when she kept pushing, I realized she was serious. I told her there was no way I could just give up my venue, especially since it was so hard to secure and it meant a lot to me. She got upset and said I was being selfish, considering that she was now in a crisis situation. She argued that since we're sisters, I should want to help her and that I could just find another venue or have a smaller wedding. She even said she would pay me back the deposit if it made me feel better. I told her that wasn't an option. For one, I didn't want to have my wedding disrupted by her wedding being at the same place. For two, I'd already put a lot of time and effort into planning this event, and I didn't think it was fair for her to just swoop in and take over something that was meant for my special day. She didn't take this well and accused me of being a bridezilla and not caring about family. I tried to suggest that she look for other venues nearby, but she said everything was either too expensive or fully booked. I felt bad for her, but I wasn't willing to give up my own plans. Eventually, we stopped talking for a few days, but then she reached out again, asking if I could help her find another venue. She said she was losing her mind over this, and her fiancé, 31M, was equally stressed. At this point, I was frustrated and said that while I could help her look, there was no way I could give up my venue. Fast forward a bit, and it seems like the situation only escalated. My sister started telling other family members that I was being unsupportive and selfish, and even mentioned that I was ruining her wedding by not offering up my venue. My parents called me and told me I should reconsider because it would be a huge gesture and a way to show her I care. I explained again why I couldn't do it, but they insisted that family should come first. Now, my sister is angry and calling me selfish in front of other relatives, saying that I don't want to see her happy and that I'm taking away a big moment for her. I feel like I've done everything I can to be there for her, but I'm still being painted as the villain. To be clear, I'm not against helping her with her wedding in other ways. I've offered to help her with the guest list, the invitations, and even suggested some great photographers. But this venue issue seems like a deal breaker for her, and she's still upset. I've even asked my fiancé if he thinks I'm in the wrong, but he's fully supportive of my decision to keep the venue for ourselves. I just feel like I'm stuck in the middle of a family drama I didn't ask for, and now I'm the one getting blamed for it. So, AITA for refusing to give my sister my wedding venue after hers fell through? Edit. I want to clarify that the reason I'm so attached to this venue is because it's been my dream location for years. It's one of those places that's been in my mind since I was a kid. I didn't just pick it because it was convenient. It's an integral part of how I've always imagined my wedding. I also want to mention that I didn't just ignore her problem. I've tried to help her find alternatives and offered suggestions, but she insists that nothing compares to my venue. Edit 2. I've also received messages from some of my relatives saying I should give in and let her have it, but they're mostly distant cousins or people who won't be directly impacted. My immediate family, parents, and close relatives are divided. Some support me, others think I'm being unreasonable. I'm really stuck here and don't want this to ruin my relationship with my sister, but I also don't want to give up something that's so meaningful to me. Any advice would be appreciated. I, 29F, got married recently to my amazing husband, Max, 32M. We had a beautiful ceremony, and everything was perfect except for one major thing that I'm still struggling to forgive. A little backstory. I have an older brother, Ethan, 35M. He's always been a bit of a free spirit, never really settled down, and has a history of making questionable decisions. We've had a somewhat strained relationship over the years, mainly because of his lack of responsibility and some bad decisions that affected our family. I try to stay close with him because he's my brother, but he's the type of person who rarely takes things seriously, and it's led to a lot of tension. Max and I have been together for about 5 years, and we decided to get married this year. We had a small, intimate ceremony at a venue that meant a lot to us. I knew I didn't want a big wedding, but I did want to make sure everything was perfect, especially the dress. My wedding dress was custom-made and cost a significant amount of money, but it was worth it because it was exactly what I'd always wanted: elegant, timeless, and something I would cherish forever. A few months before the wedding, Ethan had some financial issues. He lost his job, and despite trying to help him out, he was in a pretty bad spot. He reached out to me and asked if he could stay with me and Max for a few weeks while he got back on his feet. Max and I agreed, even though we knew it might be a little challenging because we weren't used to having someone stay with us long term. But we didn't want to leave him out in the cold, especially considering our family dynamics. At first, everything seemed fine. Ethan was respectful, and I was trying my best to be supportive. However, as time went on, it became clear that Ethan wasn't making much effort to find a job, and he wasn't really helping out around the house. He'd leave his things lying around, eat all the food, and was generally very unmotivated. Max and I started to get frustrated because we were doing everything we could to help him, but he didn't seem to appreciate it. A week before the wedding, I decided to go to my parents' house to do a final fitting of my wedding dress. I had left the dress hanging in a garment bag in our spare bedroom, and I had specifically told Ethan to be careful with it. It was an expensive, delicate dress, and I knew he wasn't the most careful person with things, but I trusted him to at least leave it alone for a few days. When I came home that night, I immediately noticed something was off. The spare bedroom door was open, and I saw Ethan sitting on the floor. The first thing I noticed was the smell. There was a faint scent of something burning. My heart dropped as I walked into the room and saw my wedding dress. Half of it was burned. It was clear that someone had tried to fix it, but the damage was too severe. I was in shock. I asked Ethan what happened, and he said he didn't know how it happened, but he had been trying to steam out a wrinkle and accidentally set it on fire. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The dress was ruined. There was no way I could wear it, and I was devastated. I started crying, and Max, who had come home shortly after, was equally furious. Ethan tried to apologize, but his words felt hollow. He said he'd pay for the damages, but we both knew that there was no way he could afford to fix or replace the dress. And even if he could, it would never be the same. The next few days were a blur. I was in full panic mode, trying to figure out how to get a new dress on such short notice. I was calling bridal shops, hoping that maybe they had something available. Thankfully, I found a beautiful dress that fit, but the whole situation left a bitter taste in my mouth. I didn't want Ethan at my wedding. I was still angry, and I felt like this was the final straw in our already rocky relationship. I told him he could stay at my house until he found another place to live, but I didn't want him to attend the wedding. He begged me to reconsider, saying he was really sorry and that he'd do anything to make it up to me, but I refused. The wedding day came, and although it was beautiful, I couldn't shake the anger I still felt toward Ethan. My parents tried to convince me to let him come, but I stood my ground. Ethan didn't come to the ceremony, and when I saw him a few days later, he didn't seem to fully understand why I was still upset. He said that I was overreacting and that he was sorry, but it was just a mistake. I told him that a mistake like that was unforgivable, and I needed space from him. Now my family is torn. My parents think I'm being too harsh, and that I should let Ethan move back in and try to repair our relationship. They think I should be the bigger person and forgive him because it was an accident. But I just can't get past the fact that he ruined something so important to me. I've been really hurt by this whole situation, and while I'm not saying I'll never forgive him, I don't think I can do it right now. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother live with me again, and for not allowing him to attend my wedding. AITA for not helping my sister financially after she borrowed a large sum of money and then refuse to pay it back? I, 29M, have a younger sister, Amanda, 26F, who I've always had a bit of a strained relationship with. Growing up, she was always the problem child in our family, always making bad decisions, getting into trouble, and relying on my parents to bail her out. Despite all this, my parents have always been incredibly lenient with her, constantly forgiving her mistakes and enabling her behavior. On the other hand, I've always been more responsible, following the rules, and managing my finances carefully. A couple of years ago, Amanda ran into some major financial problems. She had been living paycheck to paycheck, had racked up a significant amount of credit card debt, and was behind on rent. One evening, she called me in tears, explaining that she was about to lose her apartment and didn't have enough money to cover the rent or her bills. She asked if I could help her out by lending her $10,000. Now, I'm not rich by any means, but I have a stable job, and I was able to save a decent amount over the years. I don't have a partner or kids, so I don't have the same financial pressures that others do. But $10,000 is still a lot of money to me, and I was hesitant to lend her such a large sum, especially considering her past behavior and how my parents had always stepped in to save her. But she promised me that she would pay me back as soon as she could, and she assured me that this would be the last time she would need help. I thought about it for a while, and after discussing it with my close friends, I decided to lend her the money. I knew she was in a tough spot, and I figured it was worth the risk if it meant helping her get back on her feet. I had a few conditions for the loan. She would pay me back in monthly installments over the course of a year, and I would need her to sign a written agreement, so we were both on the same page. She agreed to everything, and I transferred the money to her. For the first few months, everything seemed fine. She sent me the agreed-upon payments, albeit a little late at times, but I didn't mind too much. Then, around the 6th month, things started to change. She stopped paying altogether. I tried reaching out to her, asking if everything was okay and when I could expect the next payment. She kept making excuses. I'm really struggling right now. Work has been slow. I had an unexpected expense. I was sympathetic at first, but after a couple of months, I started to get frustrated. I decided to have a serious conversation with her. I reminded her of the agreement we had made and expressed how important it was for me to get my money back. She seemed very defensive and even angry, telling me that I was being unreasonable and that I was pressuring her too much. She claimed that I didn't understand what she was going through and that I was treating her like she was irresponsible, even though I was the one who had money. At that point, I was fed up. I told her that if she couldn't stick to the terms of the agreement, I would have to take legal action to recover the money. She was furious and said I was being dramatic and that she didn't need the added stress. Since that conversation, we haven't really spoken much. I've tried reaching out to her a few times, but she either ignores me or responds with more excuses. Now, our family is getting involved. My parents have been pressuring me to just let it go, saying that I'm making a big deal out of nothing and that Amanda is going through a lot. They think I should forgive her because family is family. I've tried to explain that this is about more than just the money. It's about trust, responsibility, and respect. But they keep pushing the idea that I'm being too hard on her. My mom even suggested that I should just consider it a gift and move on, but I feel like that would be enabling her behavior. I've also received some messages from Amanda asking if I could forget about the loan and let her off the hook. She claims that she's working on her finances and that she's just going through a rough patch. I've thought about it, but I'm still really upset about how she's handled the situation. I don't think it's fair for me to just let her off the hook without any accountability. The whole situation has caused a lot of tension in our family. I've been accused of being selfish and not understanding what Amanda is going through, but I feel like I'm the one being treated unfairly. I want to help her, but I don't think I should have to sacrifice my financial stability and well-being for her to learn any lessons. So, AITA for not forgiving my sister's debt and for expecting her to pay me back. AITA for refusing to let my friend bring her dog to my wedding. I, 29F, am getting married in a couple of weeks to my fiancée, 31M. We've been together for 5 years, and it's been a long time coming. We've always had a clear vision of what we wanted for our big day, an intimate, elegant ceremony at a local vineyard followed by a small reception with our closest friends and family. We've both been working on the planning for months, and everything is coming together perfectly except for one thing. One of my best friends, Jess, 28F, has a dog that she's incredibly attached to. The dog, Benny, is a small terrier mix that she's had for about 3 years. Jess treats Benny like he's her child. She takes him everywhere, and I mean everywhere. She's brought him to family gatherings, barbecues, and even some of our girls' nights out. I've never really been a dog person myself, so I've always been a little uncomfortable with Benny being around all the time, especially because he's a little high-strung and doesn't always behave well in new environments. A few months ago, Jess mentioned that she was planning on bringing Benny to my wedding. I laughed it off at first, thinking she was joking, but when she brought it up again a few weeks later, I realized she was serious. She told me that she could not attend the wedding without Benny because she couldn't imagine being without him for the entire day, and he's like family to her. I was taken aback and didn't know how to respond. I told her I hadn't planned on having any animals at the wedding, and that our venue doesn't allow pets, which was the truth. Jess was very upset and kept insisting that it shouldn't be an issue. She said Benny was well-behaved and that he could be in the back of the venue or even outside during the ceremony, as long as she could bring him. I told her I wasn't comfortable with that and that I wanted my wedding to be a pet-free event. She seemed hurt but didn't push too hard at the time, so I thought the issue was resolved. However, last week, Jess came to me again, saying that she had already made arrangements for Benny to be looked after at the venue during the ceremony, but that she really wanted to bring him to the reception. She mentioned that she had even spoken to the venue staff, who had confirmed it would be fine if the dog was on a leash and behaved well. At this point, I was really starting to feel uncomfortable. I understand that Benny is important to her, but this was my wedding, and I didn't want to deal with a dog running around, possibly barking and disrupting the event. I told Jess very clearly and kindly that I didn't want any pets at my wedding, and if she felt that strongly about having Benny there, then I would have to respectfully ask her to choose between attending without him or not attending at all. She was livid. She said that I was being unreasonable and that I was prioritizing the opinions of other people over her friendship. She claimed I was being selfish and didn't understand how hard it was for her to be away from Benny for an entire day. At this point, I was starting to feel like I was walking on eggshells. I knew I was asking her to make a hard decision, but I didn't think it was unreasonable to have a no-pets rule for my wedding. Jess is one of my closest friends, but she's also incredibly stubborn and emotional when it comes to Benny. She accused me of being unsupportive and said I didn't care about her feelings. She even told me that if I didn't let Benny come, she wasn't sure if she would be able to come to the wedding at all. This has created a huge rift in our friendship. I've tried to explain myself and emphasize that I love Benny. I just don't think a wedding is the right place for him. She hasn't budged, and now she's not speaking to me at all. I've been feeling incredibly guilty, but at the same time, I think I've been pretty patient with her and tried to compromise as much as possible. I've spoken to a few other friends about the situation, and most of them think I'm in the right, but some have said I'm being too rigid and should just let her bring the dog. The thing is, if I let her bring Benny, where do I draw the line? I don't want every guest to start asking if they can bring their pets too. I'm now seriously wondering if I've overreacted and if it's worth losing a friendship over something like this. But at the same time, I don't feel like I should have to compromise on what is supposed to be one of the most important days of my life for something like this. AITA for not letting my brother-in-law and his wife move into my house, even though they are financially struggling and ask for help. I, 28F, have a relatively small but cozy house in a suburban neighborhood, and my husband, 30M, and I have been living here for the past 3 years. We've always made sure to budget our expenses carefully, and we don't have much extra room in our finances. We both have stable jobs, but we're not wealthy by any means. It's just the two of us here, and we've kept things pretty low-key. My brother-in-law, Daniel, 32M, and his wife, Sarah, 30F, have always been somewhat financially irresponsible. They tend to live above their means, constantly buying new cars, upgrading their home appliances even when they don't need to, and going on vacations they can't really afford. It's something that's always frustrated my husband and me, especially since they often end up in debt and need help from other family members. We've had multiple discussions with them about being more careful with their finances, but they just don't seem to take it seriously. Recently, They found themselves in a particularly tight spot. Daniel lost his job about 6 months ago, and while he's been looking for work, it hasn't been easy. Sarah has a job, but she's a freelance writer, and her income is inconsistent at best. They've fallen behind on some bills, and they've been struggling to keep up with their mortgage payments. When I say struggling, I mean they were one payment away from being foreclosed on. It's been a stressful time for them, and I've tried to offer emotional support whenever I can. A couple of weeks ago, they reached out to us and asked if they could move in with us temporarily until they got back on their feet. They said they needed a place to stay for about 6 months while Daniel looked for a new job and they worked out their finances. At first, I was sympathetic, but then I realized the weight of what they were asking. Our house is small, and the only extra space we have is an office that I use for work. It's not like we have a spare bedroom, and the thought of them moving in was overwhelming. The house would be cramped, and it would mean major adjustments to our daily routine. I talked to my husband about it, and he was conflicted. He didn't want to turn them down, but he also acknowledged that it would be a big strain on us. We've always been a couple who values our privacy, and the idea of having guests in our house for 6 months was not something we were comfortable with. I was especially hesitant because I've always felt that Daniel and Sarah don't take responsibility for their actions. They've made poor financial decisions, and now they were asking us to bail them out. I didn't want to enable their behavior, and I worry that this would just be a temporary fix without addressing the underlying issues. I explained to Daniel and Sarah that, as much as we wanted to help, we just couldn't offer them a place to stay. I told them that our house wasn't big enough, and that the situation would be too stressful for us. I also pointed out that they needed to take a long, hard look at their financial habits and make some changes if they wanted to avoid ending up in this situation again. It wasn't an easy conversation, and I could tell they were disappointed, but I thought I was being firm but fair. However, things didn't go as smoothly as I'd hoped. A few days after we turned them down, Daniel reached out again, this time with a more desperate tone. He said they had nowhere else to go and that they might have to move into a cheap, run-down apartment in a bad area. He mentioned how much this would affect their mental health and how hard it would be for them to stay positive if they were living in such conditions. He begged us to reconsider, but I stuck to my decision. I didn't want to enable their reckless spending habits, and I felt like they needed to take responsibility for their own situation. This is where the family drama really kicked off. My mother-in-law, who has always been very close to Daniel, called me the next day. She was furious that we had refused to help them, especially given how close Daniel and my husband are. She accused me of being selfish and not understanding how hard their situation was. She said that as family, we should be supporting each other no matter what. She even implied that I was being cruel by turning them away when they needed help the most. I tried to explain my reasoning to her, but she wasn't having it. She said that my husband should be the one to make the decision and that I was overstepping by being so firm. This only made me feel more isolated, as I hadn't expected my mother-in-law to side with them so completely. She even mentioned that if my husband had been the one to say no, she would have understood, but that it was coming from me, someone who supposedly understood financial responsibility, yet couldn't even offer basic family support. My husband, who's caught in the middle of this, has been pretty quiet about the whole thing. He agrees with my decision, but he's also feeling the pressure from his mom. He doesn't want to cause a rift in the family, but he also doesn't want to compromise our own well-being. We've been having a lot of tense conversations, and he's expressed that he feels torn between me and his family. I can tell this situation is stressing him out, and I hate that it's affecting our relationship. I've also been feeling the weight of the criticism from the rest of the family. They've been making comments about how I don't care about family, how I'm being too hard on Daniel and Sarah, and how I'm coming off as cold and unfeeling. Some of them have even started calling me the villain in the situation. I'm starting to feel like I've made the wrong decision, but at the same time, I'm still standing by my reasoning. I don't want to enable their behavior, and I don't think letting them move in would be a sustainable solution. I've also heard through the grapevine that Daniel and Sarah have been telling everyone that I'm the one who doesn't want to help, even though my husband has said multiple times that it's a joint decision. So, AITA for not letting my brother-in-law and his wife move in with us? I know it's a tough situation, but I can't shake the feeling that I'm being unfairly blamed for doing what I think is right. Am I wrong for prioritizing my own family's well-being over helping out my in-laws? AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law's kids stay at my house after they destroyed my living room? I, 30F, live in a modest 3-bedroom home with my husband, 32M, Dan. We don't have kids ourselves, but we've always been open to hosting family gatherings, and we try to make our house a welcoming place for everyone. I work from home as a freelancer, and Dan works a traditional 9-to-5 job in marketing, so our schedules allow for us to spend a lot of time together. We keep the house in pretty good condition, and while we're not obsessive about cleanliness, we do expect that guests respect the space, especially since we don't have kids to make messes ourselves. My sister-in-law, Mandy, 35F, is married to Dan's older brother, and they have 3 kids, Mia, 10, Ben, 8, and Lucy, 6. Mandy and her husband, Jason, have never really been great at keeping the kids under control, especially when they're at other people's houses. It's like they get a free pass to do whatever they want. My husband and I have hosted them a few times over the years, but the last time we had them over, things took a turn for the worse, and I'm still upset about it. A couple of weeks ago, Mandy asked if her kids could stay with us for the weekend because she and Jason had a weekend getaway planned for their anniversary. She said they'd love to have some time away, and she promised the kids would be on their best behavior. I agreed, but I made it clear that I expected the kids to be respectful and follow the house rules, which are pretty simple. No running inside, no jumping on the furniture, no throwing things around, and no eating in the living room. I thought that was fair enough. The first day they were here, things were fine. The kids were loud, sure, but I was expecting that. I let them play in the yard, and they got along with our dog, Charlie, who's a pretty chill lab. I didn't mind their mess in the yard as it wasn't our problem to clean up, and I thought, hey, they're just kids. But when they came inside to get some snacks and settled down for the evening, that's when things started to go south. I had set up the living room with some blankets and pillows so we could all watch a movie together. The kids were really excited about it, and Dan and I were happy to spend time with them. I made popcorn, and we watched the movie for about 30 minutes, but then things got a little out of hand. Mia, the oldest, started jumping on the couch, pretending to be a superhero, and I asked her to stop, since I didn't want the furniture getting ruined. Ben and Lucy joined in, and before I knew it, they were all jumping on the couch, throwing the pillows around, and turning the room into a war zone. I asked them to stop several times, but it didn't seem like they were listening. At that point, I went to the kitchen to get some drinks, hoping that when I came back, they would have calmed down. When I returned, I was absolutely livid. The kids had flipped over the coffee table, spilled juice on the carpet, broken one of our lamps, and knocked over a decorative vase that had been a wedding gift. I stood there in shock for a moment before I asked them, what happened? Ben shrugged, and Mia immediately said, it wasn't our fault. We were just playing. I told them that they needed to clean up the mess right away, and that they should apologize for breaking things. They didn't really seem that sorry, and when I asked Mandy about it, she shrugged it off, saying, they're just kids, they'll calm down eventually. I was not okay with this. I had already asked them to respect the house rules, and I didn't think it was unreasonable to expect them to follow basic guidelines while they were in someone else's home. I had to spend an hour cleaning up the mess, vacuuming the spilled juice, and rearranging the furniture. Dan helped, but he was frustrated too. He loves his niece and nephews, but he also hates when they act out like this. Later that evening, I sat down with Dan, and we both agreed that we needed to talk to Mandy about the behavior of her kids. We didn't want to cause any conflict, but we were both really upset about how they had destroyed our living room, and we didn't want to let it slide. I texted Mandy and politely asked if we could have a conversation about the kids' behavior, as it was a bit much for us to handle. She seemed taken aback, but agreed to talk. The conversation did not go well. Mandy got defensive immediately, saying that her kids were just being kids and that we were overreacting. She told me that I shouldn't expect her kids to behave perfectly all the time, and that it was unreasonable to expect them to act like little adults in someone else's home. I tried to remain calm, but I told her that I expected her kids to follow basic rules, especially when they were guests in our home. I also pointed out that it wasn't just the mess, but the broken items that bothered me. That's when things really escalated. Mandy started accusing me of attacking her parenting and telling me that I was too uptight and had no idea what it was like to deal with kids. She claimed that I had no right to expect her children to behave like robots, and that I was being a bitch for making such a big deal out of it. I was honestly taken aback by her response, because I was just trying to have a mature conversation about how to handle the situation in the future. At this point, Dan stepped in to try to calm things down. He told Mandy that we loved her kids, but that the weekend had been much harder than we expected. He asked her if we could find a compromise going forward, like maybe not having the kids stay with us for extended weekends, or asking her to keep a closer eye on them when they visit. Mandy didn't seem to take him seriously, and instead she started making snide comments about how we didn't understand what it was like to be parents. The next day, when I went to check on the kids, I found that Mia had scribbled on the wall with a marker, and Lucy had been playing with my makeup. I was about to lose it at this point, but I took a deep breath and tried to keep it together. I told Dan that I didn't feel comfortable having the kids stay with us again. We talked about it for a while, and he agreed that the situation wasn't fair to us. We don't want to be those people who refuse to host family, but at this point, we felt like we needed to set some boundaries. I sent Mandy a message saying that while we were happy to see her kids, we wouldn't be able to host them again unless there was a clear agreement about their behavior. I didn't want to feel like I was walking on eggshells in my own home, and I didn't think that was unreasonable. Mandy didn't respond, and honestly, I'm not sure if she's angry with us or if she just doesn't know how to deal with the situation. Now, Dan's parents are saying that we should have been more understanding and that we're being too hard on Mandy and her kids. They also said that we're making it awkward for everyone. But I don't think I'm in the wrong here. We didn't ask for much, just some basic respect, and we didn't get it. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law's kids stay at my house again after they destroyed my living room and broke some things? AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law bring her kids to my wedding after she lied about them being well-behaved. So I, 29F, am getting married to my fiancé, Mark, 32M, in a couple of months. We're having a fairly traditional wedding, and while we're both excited about it, we've had a few conflicts about guest list decisions. One of the bigger issues has been with my sister-in-law, Laura, 35F. Laura has 3 kids, Eli, 12, Emma, 9, and Noah, 5, and they are, to put it politely, a handful. I've known them for years, and while I love them because they're my family, I've always had a hard time with how they behave, especially in social settings. Laura is a nice person, but she's not the best at discipline when it comes to her kids. It's a bit of a running joke in the family that they're allowed to do pretty much whatever they want, and it drives me crazy. I have nothing against kids in general, but I really don't want a chaotic scene at my wedding. From the beginning, I made it clear to Mark and our families that we wanted a child-free wedding. I thought it would be easier to avoid drama this way, and besides, I really wanted the event to be intimate and as smooth as possible. Mark agreed with me, and we sent out the invitations to all of our guests with the clear note that no children were allowed. Laura, however, didn't take it well. She messaged me almost immediately after receiving the invite to express her disappointment and try to convince me to make an exception for her kids. She said they would be well-behaved and that I'd regret not having them there. I was a bit taken aback, but I stood my ground and said no. I also mentioned that we had made the decision based on the venue's policy and that we simply weren't in a position to accommodate kids at the wedding. Laura didn't respond well to that, but I thought maybe she would just drop it. A couple of weeks passed, and things seemed fine. I thought the matter was settled, but then Laura dropped a bombshell on me. She sent a long message about how much it would mean to her if I allowed her kids to come. She wrote that it was so unfair to not include them, especially considering how much my wedding meant to the family. She claimed that her kids would behave perfectly and that they wouldn't cause any trouble. This is where things took a turn. She also said that if they couldn't come, she would probably have to miss the wedding because she wouldn't have anyone to watch them. She then suggested that I should compromise by allowing at least one of them to attend, maybe the youngest, Noah, because he was the easiest to handle. At this point, I was starting to get frustrated. I had already said no, and yet here she was trying to manipulate the situation and guilt-trip me into changing my decision. I calmly replied that my decision was final and that I didn't think it was fair to alter the guest list for anyone. I emphasized that if she felt strongly about not attending without her kids, I would respect her choice, but the wedding would remain child-free. The next thing I know, my phone blows up with texts from various family members. Some of them were supporting me, saying that they agreed with my decision and that I should stand my ground. Others, however, were really upset, claiming that I was being too rigid and too strict about the no-kids rule. My mother-in-law, 58F, reached out and said that Laura had spoken to her and that I was being unfair to Laura and her family. She suggested that I was being too selfish for not making exceptions for Laura's kids, especially since they were part of the family. This really threw me off. Mark supported me, but I could tell he was uncomfortable with the way things were escalating. He loves his sister, but he also knows how important the wedding is to me, so he didn't want to take sides. The tension between us and his family was growing, and I was starting to feel like the villain in my own story. Eventually, Laura reached out again and said she had made up her mind. She was going to skip the wedding, but it seemed like a dramatic ultimatum. She said that if her kids weren't invited, then she'd never forgive me for excluding them, and she felt like I was creating unnecessary drama. This message left me feeling pretty hurt, especially since I had never intended for it to get to this point. I simply wanted a peaceful, kid-free celebration. The wedding is getting closer, and now I'm starting to second-guess myself. I've always believed that weddings are about the couple and the love they share, but I'm starting to feel guilty about how this situation is affecting the family dynamic. Part of me wants to tell Laura that she's welcome to come alone, but I know how hard it might be for her to attend without her kids. The other part of me is thinking that maybe I should just stick to my guns and not allow any exceptions, even if it means alienating her further. I don't want to cause unnecessary drama, but I also don't want to compromise on something that's really important to me. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law bring her kids to my wedding after she lied about them being well-behaved. Should I cave and let at least one of them come? Or am I right to stand firm on the no-kids rule? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for not letting my sister and her family move into my house after they lost theirs in a fire. I, 28F, live in a decent-sized house that I purchased about 2 years ago. It's a bit of a fixer-upper, but I've been putting in a lot of work and saving up for renovations. It's not a mansion by any means, but it's big enough for me, and I've worked hard to make it my home. My sister, Beth, 33, has always been a bit of a free spirit. She's married to Mark, 35, and they have 2 kids, Emma, 6, and Luke, 3. Over the years, they've moved around a lot, and they've never been very financially stable. I love them, but they've always leaned on me for support when things go south. About 3 weeks ago, there was a devastating fire that completely destroyed their house. They were lucky to get out in time, and while they're all physically okay, they lost almost everything. When I first heard about it, I was immediately worried and offered to help in any way I could. They were staying with a friend for a few days, but I offered them a temporary place to stay at my house until they could figure things out. Beth was incredibly grateful and insisted they didn't want to impose. I told her to not worry about it, that they could stay with me for as long as they needed. I really wanted to help, and I thought it would be a temporary situation. A week later, I got a call from Beth saying that their insurance company was taking forever to process their claim, and they were going to be homeless for at least a few months. She asked if they could move in with me permanently until things were sorted out. The problem is my house is not that big. It's a 2-bedroom house, and one of the bedrooms is my office. The other bedroom is where I sleep, and I have some personal things stored in the living room that I don't want to have to move around. I also work from home and need my space to be quiet, especially during the day. I told Beth that I didn't think it was going to work, not because I didn't want to help, but because my house is just too small for all of them. I explained that it wasn't a good environment for me to focus on work, and it would make things uncomfortable for all of us, especially with 2 young kids running around. I suggested that they look into other options, like renting a temporary place or staying with friends. Beth was upset but tried to remain understanding. However, things took a turn when she mentioned that no one else was offering them a place to stay. Mark's parents were out of the country, and her friends were either too far away or didn't have space. She said, "We have nowhere else to go, and we really need your help. It's not like we want to impose, but you're the only family we have nearby. Please, just let us stay for a little while." I still said no, explaining that it would be a huge disruption to my life, and I just didn't feel comfortable with the idea. I reiterated that I would help them with things like food, clothes, and finding a place, but my house was just not an option. Beth got emotional, saying that I was being selfish and inconsiderate, especially considering everything that had happened to them. She said it was hard to believe that I, of all people, would turn them away when they needed family the most. I told her that I wasn't turning them away, but I was trying to be realistic about the situation. I didn't want things to get tense between us, but I had to be honest. She called me a couple of days later and said that their insurance company had finally approved a temporary rental for them, but that it was out of their budget. She said that if I would just let them stay at my house for a while, they could save up for the rental and pay me rent once they were settled. I told her that I wasn't interested in being a landlord to my own sister and that I didn't want to complicate things even further. Now, there's been a lot of tension. Beth has been posting about how hard it is on social media, talking about how she's just trying to get her life back together and how nobody is helping her. I've had friends reach out to me, asking if I was really letting my sister and her family be homeless while I have a house they could stay in. I try to explain my side, but I feel like people are starting to think I'm the villain here. I've helped Beth and her family out in the past when they've had financial problems, loaning them money and helping them find jobs. But this time, I just feel like I have to draw the line. I've worked hard to get where I am, and I don't want to jeopardize my own stability for something that could turn into a much bigger issue. Beth is still upset with me, and it's been a little awkward when we talk. I'm starting to feel guilty, but I really don't know what else I could have done. I want to help her, but I don't want to completely upend my life either. So, AITA for not letting my sister and her family move into my house. AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law and her kids stay with us after my wife's family lost their house in a fire. So, a bit of background. I, 29M, am married to my wife, Emily, 28F, and we've been together for about 6 years. We live in a modest 3-bedroom house in a suburban neighborhood. Things are good, but like most young couples, we have a mortgage, a car loan, and a couple of other bills to juggle. Emily's family, on the other hand, has always been, well, a bit complicated. They have some wealth, but they tend to manage it poorly, and they don't always make the best life choices. Emily has 2 sisters, Anna, 31F, who is the oldest, and Becca, 26F, who's the youngest. Anna has been married for about 7 years and has 3 kids. Max, 7, Lucy, 5, and Ella, 3. Becca is single and doesn't have kids. Emily's family is pretty close-knit, and while I've always tried to get along with everyone, things have been tense with Anna for a while. Anna, and I just don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, parenting, money, lifestyle choices, etc. She's a very proud person and doesn't like to ask for help unless it's absolutely necessary. Here's where things get tricky. About a month ago, Anna's house caught fire. The fire was devastating, but thankfully, no one was seriously hurt. Anna, her husband Mark, and the kids were all able to get out safely, but the house was completely destroyed. After the fire, they were left with nothing, and it was clear they would need to find somewhere to stay temporarily. Emily and I immediately reached out to Anna to offer our support. We sent them some gift cards, clothes for the kids, and other necessities. Emily, being the kind-hearted person she is, told Anna that they were welcome to stay with us until they got back on their feet. Anna was extremely grateful, but she didn't give us a clear idea of how long she intended to stay. It was like she assumed it would be a given that they would be with us for an indefinite period of time. Here's the part that caused the issue. Emily and I discussed it, and while we both agreed that we couldn't leave them hanging, I expressed some concerns. We don't have a ton of space, and while I love my nieces and nephews, 3 kids in a house that's already pretty cramped would be a huge challenge. We're both working full-time, and I'd have to rearrange my entire schedule just to make sure they weren't in the way while we were both at work. Plus, the emotional toll of living with someone who already has issues with boundaries and respect, like Anna, will be hard to handle. After some back and forth, I told Emily that I didn't think it would be wise to have Anna and her kids move in with us. I suggested we could help them find a temporary rental or maybe even help with hotel costs, but I really didn't think it was reasonable to have them stay with us long term. Emily was pretty hurt by my stance and felt like I was being unsympathetic, but I tried to explain that this wasn't about not wanting to help. It was about not putting ourselves in a position where we'd be overwhelmed by something that could damage our relationship. Emily spoke with Anna about it, and Anna was understandably not happy. She felt that I was being selfish and that family should always come first, especially in a time of crisis. The argument turned pretty heated. Anna kept insisting that they didn't have anywhere else to go, and the longer they stayed in hotels or with other relatives, the harder it would be to get their life back on track. She said they needed stability, and since we offered initially, it wasn't right for me to back out now. Emily stood by her sister and told me she felt like I wasn't being empathetic enough. I understand where Emily's coming from, but I still didn't think it was a sustainable solution for us. The situation only escalated from there. Emily and I started arguing more frequently about it, and her family got involved. Emily's mom called me to express her disappointment, and even Becca sent me a message saying I should be ashamed of myself for not stepping up. The guilt was starting to eat at me, but I still didn't think it was the right decision to have them move in. Emily started saying that she felt like I was putting our comfort above our family's needs, which really stung. To make matters worse, Anna decided to take things further by reaching out to some of our mutual friends to complain about me, painting me as this unsympathetic jerk who didn't care about family. That didn't sit well with me, and it made the whole thing even messier. I'm starting to feel like I'm the villain in this situation, but at the same time, I just don't think it's feasible for us to open up our home to a family of 5 without it creating serious tension. I've suggested we sit down with Anna and have a clear conversation about boundaries and expectations if they do decide to stay with us for a short period. I'm willing to help in any way that I can, but I still think that staying here long-term isn't a good idea. Emily is torn, and while she agrees that something needs to be worked out, she's also worried about her sister's situation. I feel like I'm in a lose-lose position. I want to be there for Emily's family, but I also don't want to ruin our home and relationship over this. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law and her kids stay with us after the fire? AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law bring her kids to my wedding after they ruined my engagement party? So here's the situation. I, 28F, am getting married to my fiancé, Dave, 30M, in a couple of months. We're both excited, but there's a bit of drama brewing around the whole thing, mainly because of my sister-in-law, Carla, 35F, and her 2 kids, Jake, 9M, and Olivia, 7F. To give some context, Carla is married to my older brother, Mark, 37M, and while we've had our differences over the years, I've always tried to maintain a relationship with her. She can be a bit overbearing, and sometimes I feel like she crosses boundaries, but I never thought it would escalate to the point that it has. A couple of months ago, Dave and I hosted our engagement party, which was supposed to be a small, relaxed event with close friends and family. We wanted a low-key celebration, but we had a pretty big guest list, and things were looking good until Carla insisted on bringing her kids. Now, I want to clarify that this was a family gathering, but the vibe we were going for was more adult-oriented, with lots of talking, drinking, and mingling. I didn't mind if kids were there in some capacity, but I specifically told her that we didn't want young children running around during the event and that we'd be arranging a separate, supervised activity for them. Carla, however, completely disregarded this. She showed up with both kids in tow, and things went downhill quickly. At first, it wasn't that bad. The kids were playing with some toys in a corner and weren't causing too much trouble. But then, things started escalating. Jake started running around and knocking into furniture, while Olivia was loudly crying for attention and refusing to play with the other kids, who were there because their parents had been invited and knew how to behave. It was distracting, to say the least, and I could tell people were starting to feel uncomfortable. I kept asking Carla to calm the kids down or take them outside, but she brushed it off, saying they were just being kids. This continued for hours. It wasn't just the noise, though. At one point, Jake spilled his drink all over my cousin's dress, and Carla didn't even apologize. Instead, she just said, "It's an accident, don't make a big deal out of it." My cousin was visibly upset, and I had to step in and ask Carla to help clean it up. Again, no apology from her, and I felt like I had to be the one to keep things civil, even though this whole situation was her fault. By the end of the night, the kids were completely out of control, and my guests were starting to leave earlier than expected. I was beyond frustrated, and when Carla said, "Well, the kids had fun, didn't they?" I almost lost it. This wasn't about the kids. It was about everyone else's experience, and she had completely ruined it. Fast forward to a couple of weeks ago when I sent out the wedding invitations. I hadn't even thought twice about this, but when I sent the invite to Carla, I specifically mentioned that we would be limiting the number of children at the wedding. We had a set number of seats, and we were trying to keep it as intimate as possible. I didn't feel comfortable with Carla bringing her kids after what happened at the engagement party, so I told her that we'd love for her to attend, but the kids weren't invited. Carla immediately called me, saying I was being ridiculous and unfair by excluding her kids. She told me that it was my duty as a sister-in-law to make her feel welcome, and that if she couldn't bring her kids, she wouldn't be able to attend at all. I told her that I understood her feelings, but I didn't think it would be appropriate for her kids to be at such an important event after everything that happened at the engagement party. Well, things have only gotten worse. Carla went on a rampage in our family group chat, claiming that I was discriminating against her children and ruining the family dynamic. She said that if her kids couldn't come, she wouldn't be attending the wedding, and neither would Mark, her husband. She said it would be too hard to leave them with a sitter, and that if the kids couldn't be there, it was basically like we were saying her family wasn't welcome. This all culminated in a huge argument at our family dinner, where my parents sided with Carla, saying I was being too rigid and needed to get over myself. They said it was a family wedding, and families are supposed to include kids. They claimed that it was not that big a deal, and that I should just let Carla bring her kids to avoid making waves. I tried explaining why I didn't want them there, but no one seemed to get it. My brother, Mark, didn't say much during the dinner, but later told me privately that Carla was really upset and that I should just let it go. He didn't want any drama surrounding the wedding. I've been feeling guilty ever since. On the one hand, I get that it's important to include family, but on the other hand, I honestly don't feel like I can let her kids ruin my wedding day like they did the engagement party. I want the day to be about celebrating with friends and family who understand the boundaries of the event. I'm not trying to be unreasonable here, but I'm at my breaking point. So, AITA for refusing to let Carla bring her kids to my wedding after they made the engagement party so difficult? Am I being too harsh by sticking to my guns, or should I just let it go and avoid more family drama? AITA for refusing to pay my sister's wedding debts after I told her I couldn't afford to be in her bridal party? I'm a 30-year-old woman, and I have a younger sister, Mia, who's 27. Growing up, we always had a bit of a competitive relationship. Mia was always the one who had it together, the popular girl, the one who was always invited to everything, the one everyone in our family seemed to favor. Meanwhile, I was a bit of a black sheep. I didn't go to college, I struggled to find a stable job, and I never really got into the whole shiny lifestyle that Mia seemed to embody so effortlessly. As a result, our relationship was always a bit strained. I didn't really care for her need to be the center of attention, but I still loved her, and I wanted to support her when important things happened in her life. Mia got engaged a year ago to her long-term boyfriend, Jordan. I wasn't super surprised. They'd been together for 5 years, and while I wasn't totally thrilled about their dynamic, he always came across as self-absorbed. I didn't say anything negative because it was her choice. When she asked me to be a bridesmaid, I agreed, even though I knew it would mean more expenses on my part. I'm not rich, and I'm barely scraping by with my rent, car payments, and student loans. But Mia's wedding was a huge deal for her, and I figured I could manage. As the months went on, the wedding plans became more and more extravagant. Mia had a vision for her wedding that was almost surreal. The venue was this enormous, high-end country club, and everything was planned with a no-expenses-spared mentality. The dress was custom-made, the flowers were from an exclusive florist, and the food was catered by a Michelin star restaurant. None of it was remotely in my budget, but I still agreed to be a bridesmaid, knowing I would need to cover the cost of the dress, shoes, hair, makeup, etc. A few months before the wedding, Mia called me to tell me there was an important discussion she needed to have. She told me that, because of how expensive everything was, she wanted me to help her out with the costs. I was initially confused because she hadn't mentioned this before. Mia explained that the bridal party was responsible for the wedding favors, the bachelorette party, and that all the girls should be pitching in to cover the costs of the venue and other expenses. I was taken aback. I assumed that the bride's family, in this case Mia's parents, would be footing the majority of the bill, like at most weddings. I politely explained that I just didn't have the money for it, especially considering that I was already struggling to meet my own expenses. Mia was not happy with my response. She insisted that if I wanted to be part of the wedding, I needed to be willing to contribute, and that family helps family. I offered to help out with little things I could afford, maybe contribute to the bridal shower or bring some snacks to the bachelorette party, but she seemed unimpressed. Over the next couple of months, Mia began demanding more and more. First, it was the wedding dress fitting, which I had to pay for. Then it was makeup trials, the bachelorette weekend trip, a weekend in a luxury beach house, and even contributions to the wedding photographer and videographer fees. It all felt overwhelming, and I was beginning to question whether being in the bridal party was even worth it. At some point, I just couldn't keep up with the demands. When I explained to Mia that I wasn't in a financial position to cover these additional expenses, she got angry and told me I was being selfish. She made me feel like I was abandoning her, and that, if I really cared about her, I would find a way to make it happen. I told her I simply couldn't. That was when she dropped the bombshell. She said if I couldn't afford to be in the wedding, I shouldn't expect to be included in anything. "You're either all in or not at all," she said. Mia told me that I would be cut out of the bridal party and that she didn't want me at the wedding unless I was fully committed to the financial side of things. I was devastated. We hadn't always had the closest relationship, but this felt like a final blow. I made the difficult decision to step away from being a bridesmaid. I let her know I wasn't going to be able to afford the additional expenses and that I wouldn't be able to participate in the wedding in any other capacity either. Mia did not take this well. She called me unsupportive and selfish, and that I was ruining her big day by making it all about me. She told me that if I didn't help, I could forget about being a part of her life moving forward. I respected her decision and told her I loved her, but I had to prioritize my own financial well-being. That was a few months ago, and I haven't heard from her much since. My parents are now upset with me too. They think I'm being unreasonable and should have just sucked it up for Mia's sake, but I really just don't have the means to throw money at a wedding I'm already struggling to be a part of. Mia is now planning to send me the wedding invite, but I'm not sure if I want to attend at this point. The whole thing feels like too much, and I'm hurt by how she's treated me. I also feel like I'm being pressured into participating in a celebration I didn't really agree with financially. Now I'm questioning whether I was too hard on her. Was I wrong for not being able to support her in the way she expected? AITA for stepping away from the bridal party and refusing to cover the additional costs she kept adding on? AITA for not attending my sister's wedding because of her dress code? I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Mia, 32F. Growing up, we were always competitive, and while I don't think we ever outright hated each other, there was always a lot of tension. Our parents often compared us, as Mia was the golden child, and I was the rebellious one. This dynamic stayed with us into adulthood, and while we tried to patch things up over the years, it's been rocky. Mia recently got engaged to her fiancé, Tim, 34M, and they decided to have a large wedding with a very specific theme, a formal black tie event with the added twist of a very strict dress code. The dress code was something I found off-putting, to say the least. It wasn't just black tie. It was Gatsby-themed, meaning attendees were required to wear outfits from the 1920s, flapper dresses for women, tuxedos with bow ties for men. The idea of this vintage dress code didn't sit well with me for several reasons. The main one being that it just felt like an unnecessary hassle. Not only was it difficult to find something that fit the specific style, but the whole thing felt pretentious. I'm not someone who's into themed parties, and the idea of spending hundreds on a dress I would never wear again didn't appeal to me. When Mia first sent out the invites, she made it clear that anyone who didn't comply with the dress code wouldn't be allowed into the venue. I thought it was a bit extreme, but I didn't think much of it at first. I figured I could either find something on a budget or maybe just skip out on the wedding altogether if I didn't find anything suitable. But as the wedding date approached, the pressure started to build. Mia kept reminding everyone about the dress code and how important it was for the aesthetic of the day. It felt like she was treating it like some kind of fashion show rather than a celebration of her and Tim's love. Here's where the problem really started. I couldn't find a dress that fit the theme. The only ones I could find were either too expensive, didn't fit my body type, or were so out of style that I couldn't even fathom wearing them. I tried going to multiple shops, and the salespeople would look at me like I was some kind of failure when I explained I couldn't find anything. In the end, I found a beautiful, simple black dress that I loved, but it wasn't from the 1920s. I tried to reach out to Mia and asked if I could wear it instead, explaining that I couldn't afford anything else and that it was still formal and elegant. She responded almost immediately, saying that she would prefer if I wore something more in line with the theme. She added that if I couldn't find something, I should let her know, but she emphasized that it would really disappoint her if I didn't at least try to find something that fit the theme. I felt like she was being completely unreasonable. I understand wanting to have a cohesive theme for the wedding, but it seemed like she was prioritizing aesthetics over the actual people attending. I told her that I would try one more time to find something, but I couldn't promise anything. I spent hours online and in stores trying to find a dress, but I came up empty-handed. At this point, I was frustrated. I had already spent money on the gift, travel, and time off from work to attend, and now I was being told I couldn't even wear a simple black dress. I told Mia that I wouldn't be attending the wedding because I just didn't feel comfortable or respected by her dress code. I thought she would understand. After all, I was still supporting her, just not in the way she wanted. To say she didn't take it well would be an understatement. Mia called me and absolutely ripped into me, accusing me of being selfish, inconsiderate, and making her wedding all about me. She said that I was deliberately trying to sabotage her special day because I couldn't get over my own issues with the dress code. She called me jealous and said that it was her day and I needed to respect that. When I tried to explain my side, she kept cutting me off and saying I was making excuses. Now, our parents are involved. They're telling me I'm being petty and should just suck it up and buy a dress that fits the theme. They've been pressuring me to get over myself and attend the wedding for the sake of family unity. My friends have been divided too. Some of them say I'm in the right, that Mia's dress code is unreasonable, and that a wedding should be about love, not about enforcing a theme. Others think I should just go along with it and wear something I don't want to because it's important to Mia and it's just one day. So, AITA for not attending my sister's wedding because of her dress code? I feel like I'm being forced into a position where I either have to compromise my own comfort and values or risk losing my relationship with my sister and family over a dress. Am I being unreasonable here? AITA for not allowing my friend to bring her toddler to my wedding? So, some background first. I'm 28, getting married to my fiancé, Ben, who is 29. We've been together for 5 years, and I've been dreaming about this wedding for pretty much my whole life. It's not going to be some massive affair, but we've kept the guest list pretty tight, and I wanted everything to feel special. We've made it clear that we really want our wedding to be a night for adults only. I know this isn't a unique request. Plenty of people opt for adult-only weddings to make it a bit more intimate, and we thought it would be easier for us and the guests too. Now, the issue comes with my friend Tina. We've known each other since college, and she's one of my closest friends, but we're not as close as we used to be. The reason for that is because, over the past few years, Tina has changed a lot, and frankly, I feel like I'm on a different wavelength than her now. She had a baby about 2 years ago. Cute kid, very sweet, but she's become super overprotective. I understand that being a mom can make you a little obsessed with your child, but it seems like Tina's priorities have shifted completely. She never wants to go out without her toddler, and if she does, she talks about him nonstop. It's gotten to the point where hanging out with her isn't really about having fun or catching up anymore. It's like I'm just a third wheel while she does everything she can to entertain her kid. If we do go out, it's like her life revolves around what her toddler needs, and I get that. It's her baby, but I kind of miss the old Tina. Anyway, she RSVP'd for our wedding a couple of months ago, and I got really excited about it. We've always had a blast together, so I was looking forward to having her there. But then last week, she reached out to me with an issue. she wants to bring her son. Now, I was caught off guard. We had clearly stated that the wedding was going to be adult only, and I know I sent out a firm invitation. No kids, no exceptions. But she texted me saying something like, I know you said no kids, but I don't have anyone to watch him. It's really important for me to be there for you, and I can't leave him with just anyone. He's still so young, and I need to keep an eye on him at all times. I responded politely, reminding her of our adult-only policy and explaining that while I totally understand the challenge of finding someone to babysit, the wedding was really important to us, and we needed to stick to the guest list and rules. I said that I would love for her to be there, but unfortunately, we couldn't make exceptions. She didn't take that well. She said she understood, but then started throwing guilt at me, saying things like, you know how hard it is for me, right? And I just want to support you, but it feels like you don't care about how tough this is for me. That made me feel guilty, but I stood my ground and reminded her again that it wasn't personal. I wasn't trying to exclude her son. It was just that I wanted our wedding to be for adults. The next few days were awkward. She didn't really reply to my messages, and I didn't hear from her much, which I found odd because we'd always communicated regularly. Then she sent me a message saying, I guess if you really feel like that, I won't be coming. But I really thought we were closer than that. I tried to call her to smooth things over, but she didn't pick up. I left her a message saying I'd be upset if she didn't come, but I understood if she couldn't come without her son. I let her know how much her friendship meant to me, but that the wedding was really about Ben and me, and we wanted it to be the way we envisioned it. I didn't want to be pressured into making exceptions. She never responded. A couple of days later, I saw on her social media that she had posted about a family vacation she was taking with her son, so it's clear she wasn't that concerned about missing the wedding. But it stung that she made it seem like I was being the bad guy, especially since she had RSVP'd for the wedding, and now it looked like I was forcing her to choose between me and her child. I've been going back and forth on whether I did the right thing, but I really don't want my wedding day to turn into a childcare situation. I love my friend, but her priorities have changed so much, and it's been really hard to stay close when it feels like I'm always competing with her kid. I'm not sure if I was too harsh in holding firm to my adult-only request, but I also feel like I've been reasonable given the situation. So, Reddit, AITA for not allowing my friend to bring her toddler to my wedding. AITA for telling my sister that her wedding dress was tacky and causing a huge fight. I, 27F, have an older sister, Claire, 30F, and we've always had a close relationship, up until recently. Claire is getting married in 2 months, and it's been a whirlwind of wedding plans, emotions, and a little bit of drama here and there, but I honestly thought we were handling everything well. I've been helping with her wedding prep, and we've been picking out decorations, helping her with the guest list, and doing all of that fun sisterly stuff. The trouble started when Claire asked me to go with her to pick out her wedding dress. I was excited to be part of that experience with her, and we made a whole day of it, getting lunch, talking about life, and doing the thing where we spend hours trying on dresses. It was supposed to be a fun, memorable day. However, when Claire found the dress she wanted, I was a bit taken aback. It wasn't what I expected from her. It wasn't at all what I thought she would go for. The dress was, well, it was bold. It had layers upon layers of tulle, an excessive amount of sequins, and the overall design screamed bridezilla chic rather than elegant or classic. It was honestly a bit too much for my taste. I mean, it wasn't like she was wearing something inappropriate or totally off the wall, but the dress was so flashy that it looked more like something you'd wear to a prom or a themed event rather than your wedding day. And it was kind of out of step with the theme of the wedding, too. She's having a small, intimate garden ceremony, and this dress felt more suited for a Vegas-style extravaganza. I didn't want to immediately shut her down, but I also couldn't keep my thoughts to myself, so I gently mentioned that maybe she should consider something a bit more understated, especially for the venue and the vibe of the wedding. I said, I think this dress is a bit more dramatic than what you're going for. Maybe something simpler might fit better with the whole look you're going for. Claire, however, did not take that suggestion well. She looked at me with this shocked expression, like I had just told her I hated her dress. And then she said, "You don't think it's perfect? This is the one I've dreamed of my whole life." Now, I'm all for respecting her dream dress, and I really do want her to feel amazing on her wedding day, but I still thought that maybe I should be honest with her. So I told her, It's not that I don't think it's beautiful. I just feel like there are other dresses that could capture your vision in a way that's more in line with the rest of the wedding. I just wanted to look back and love the dress you chose. That's when things got heated. Claire started tearing up, and I immediately felt guilty. But at the same time, I still felt that I was just trying to be honest with her. She snapped at me and said, "I can't believe you're making me feel this way about my own wedding. You're supposed to be my sister. Why do you always have to put your opinions on everything?" I was taken aback. This wasn't supposed to turn into a huge fight. I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to hurt her feelings. I just wanted her to feel amazing on her big day, and I thought maybe she was getting lost in the hype of finding the perfect dress. I reminded her that we had been through a lot together, and I wasn't trying to rain on her parade. But she kept cutting me off, saying things like, "You always think you know better than everyone, and this is my wedding, not yours." Eventually, she stormed out of the bridal shop, leaving me standing there, feeling totally confused and embarrassed. I tried texting her later to apologize, saying I didn't mean to upset her, but she didn't respond. Then she called me the next day, and we had an even bigger argument. She accused me of sabotaging her wedding and said I was being selfish. She even suggested that maybe I wasn't being supportive because I was jealous of her wedding, which is completely not true. I told her I had no interest in competing with her wedding and that I was just looking out for her. After that conversation, she started distancing herself from me, and every time I tried to reach out, she'd either ignore my messages or give me short, curt replies. The rest of my family got involved, and they all took her side, telling me that I was being overly critical and that I should have kept my thoughts to myself. My mom even said, "You know, Claire's always had very specific ideas about what she wants, and you should just let her have this." I get that it's her day, and I should have been more careful with my words, but I still feel like I wasn't in the wrong here. I genuinely believe that the dress was a poor choice, and I tried to give her a gentle suggestion. I just don't understand why she's blowing this up into such a big deal, especially when I thought I was trying to help. Now, I'm left feeling like I've lost my place as her sister, and I'm the one being made to feel like I'm the villain in this whole situation. So, AITA for telling my sister that her wedding dress was tacky? Should I have just kept my mouth shut? AITA for not letting my sister's wedding go ahead after my mom and her fiancé tried to force me to pay for it? I, 28F, have a younger sister, Olivia, 25F. We've always had a decent relationship, but she's always been the type to expect things from others, especially me. I'm not sure if it's because I'm the older sibling or if she just has a sense of entitlement, but it's been a thing since we were kids. Our parents have always been a little more lenient with her, so I guess I've always had to compensate for that. A couple of months ago, Olivia got engaged to her fiancé, Nathan, 27M. Their relationship has been pretty whirlwind. They've been dating for about a year, and it was no surprise when they got engaged. Honestly, I wasn't even sure if Nathan was the right guy for her, but it was her choice, and she seemed happy, so I didn't say anything. When the wedding planning started, things started to get tense. Olivia and Nathan have a pretty small budget for the wedding, and while I understand that, they were both working full-time jobs and living comfortably. That's when my mom started to get involved. She's always been the type to want the best for her kids and tries to make everything look perfect for the big day. In this case, she started to put pressure on me to help with the wedding costs. At first, it was small things. My mom asked me if I could help with some of the decorations, which I didn't mind. I've always been good at organizing and planning, and I thought it would be fun to contribute in that way. Then, as the wedding got closer, the request became bigger. Olivia wanted a certain type of wedding dress that was expensive, and she asked me if I could cover the difference between the dress she wanted and what her budget allowed. I said no. I was willing to help with some decorations, but I wasn't about to pay for an expensive dress that was out of her price range, especially when she was making enough money to cover it herself. Then, a couple of weeks ago, my mom pulled me aside and said that Olivia and Nathan were really struggling with the wedding budget, and that they wouldn't be able to afford the venue without some help. My mom then dropped the bombshell. She expected me to pay for the venue, which was around $15,000. She told me I could pay for it as my wedding gift to Olivia. I was shocked. I've never been in a financial position to throw around that kind of money, especially just as a gift. I've been saving for a house, and I still have student loans to pay off. When I tried to explain this, my mom got upset and said that it was just what you do for family. I told her there was no way I could pay for that venue, and she looked disappointed, like I was being selfish. The next day, Olivia called me, and she was even more upset. She told me that she didn't expect me to pay for the whole thing, but that it would be a nice gesture for me to contribute to the venue costs since I had the money. I told her that I didn't have $15,000 lying around, and that if they couldn't afford it, they should look for a less expensive venue or scale back their plans. Olivia's response was pretty harsh. She said that she didn't want a cheap wedding and that she thought I could be a little more supportive. She made it sound like I was the reason her dream wedding was in jeopardy. At this point, I was getting really frustrated. I felt like I was being guilt-tripped into something I couldn't afford. My mom kept calling me, saying I was being unreasonable and that family helps each other out. But I just didn't feel like it was fair for me to sacrifice my own financial security for something that wasn't my responsibility. My relationship with Olivia had always been decent, but I didn't feel like I should be expected to foot the bill for her wedding just because she wanted a fancy venue. I tried to talk to Nathan about it, hoping he could offer a different perspective, but he just said he understood my position, but that the wedding was important to Olivia. He didn't pressure me, but I could tell he was uncomfortable with the situation. The situation came to a head when Olivia started talking about canceling the wedding if she couldn't get the venue. My mom jumped in, telling me it was my fault if Olivia had to cancel, and that I was ruining her special day. This guilt-tripping started to make me question whether I was in the wrong, so I agreed to meet with my mom and Olivia to talk things through. During the meeting, I reiterated that I just couldn't afford the venue, and I offered some other ways I could help, like paying for some smaller details or covering a portion of the reception cost. Olivia was not happy with this. She said she wasn't asking for handouts and that I should have just said yes from the beginning, instead of making everything so difficult. My mom backed her up, and at that point I just snapped. I told them both that I wasn't going to be manipulated into paying for a wedding I didn't agree with, especially when I was already helping out in other ways. I told Olivia she could have her dream wedding or a wedding within her budget, but not both. The conversation ended with me walking out, and I've been getting silent treatment from both my mom and Olivia ever since. I feel like I was fair, but now I'm feeling guilty. I've never been someone to put money first, but I just don't think I should be expected to sacrifice my own financial goals to help fund a wedding I don't think is reasonable. AITA for not paying for my sister's wedding venue? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.